Tunisian authorities have barred the entry of a European parliamentary delegation that were meant to conduct a fact-finding mission in Tunisia. A letter says the lawmakers would not be allowed in due to multiple reservations about the visit. The move from Tunis comes nearly 2 months after the EU inked a memorandum of understanding with Tunisia to curb irregular migration. We can now bring in Camille Le Coz, Associate Director at the Migration Policy Institute. Thank you very much for joining us here on France 24. Why are we seeing this uptick, this significant uptick in arrivals on Lampedusa? In the past 2 days, we have some 7,000 people. What explains this?
Yeah, I think your colleague explained it's a mix of, the condition on the ground that have, built up a series of boats to leave. But then it's also people who are waiting to leave. And here, this is related to the condition in Tunisia that are making it more difficult for migrants, especially from sub-Saharan Africa, to stay, given the racist rhetoric of the president over the past months. And then it's also, many people at the moment are fleeing their country for a variety of reasons associated with the social and economic condition, the war, civil conflict, civil wars, as we're seeing in the case of Burkina Faso, because that has been a main nationality arriving on the Italian island yesterday. And then what we're seeing also is, the effect of climate change having an impact on people's livelihood and sometimes driving people to leave their home.
Yesterday, in a speech, Ursula von der Leyen, in her State of the European Union, spoke about these deals she has struck with countries like Tunisia to stem the flow of migrants coming into Europe. These deals are controversial. They cost the EU money. Do they work?
I think they can work in the short term if your goal is to decrease arrival, although what we're seeing exactly now is also their main limitation. So indeed, in July, the Commission, but also the Prime Minister of Italy and the Netherlands went to Tunis, negotiated this agreement with the President of Tunisia that they would support Tunisia, give money to Tunisia, and in exchange, the Tunisian authorities would, curb arrival, increase border control, make sure that fewer people are able to leave Italian shores. And so what we're seeing here, in a way, is this deal not being held on the Tunisian part. I think we need to see exactly what has happened, what is the status of the negotiation. But I think what is more worrisome is the EU seeing as prioritizing, goals in relation to curbing arrival instead of promoting, Tunisia as a stable democracy, over time, and then also Tunisia being an open country, like supporting the rights of migrants in Tunisia. And the fact that these MEPs have been denied entrance to Tunisia is also a testimony to the fact that Tunisia does not want Europeans to check on what's happening in the country in this regard.
Let's talk about something else the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said yesterday. She said she wants to go after trafficking networks, clearly, again, to stop the problem of illegal migration. But what she didn't say is she didn't talk about how to encourage legal migration. Is that a problem?
Yeah, I think this is something we're seeing quite commonly in the EU now for a number of years, is because EU member states have been unable also to agree among themselves on how we're going to reform a common European asylum system. We've been looking for partner outside to help us curb arrival. So it's been this agreement with Tunisia. It's been this attempt to fight smuggling and trafficking, where really I think what we need to be focusing on is how do we better organize solidarity? How do we organize among ourselves when we're seeing this arrival in Italy, so that Italy doesn't feel like all the pressure is on this small island, and I think here we've seen some negotiation, some progress in the negotiation with this new pact, this package of agreement of this legislative package that the EU has been put forward, that the European Commission has put forward a few years ago. The question is that going to be enough? And I think there are a lot of questions as to even if this legislative package is negotiated, is achieved, what's going to happen, and is that going to help changing the situation?
But we're not likely to see everyone singing from the same song sheet. Already now we have the Germans who say that they will be sending migrants processed in Italy back to Italy. Getting all member states to agree on the same policy is like a pipe dream, isn't it?
This is incredibly difficult, and this has been a main challenge since 2020. We've seen a breakthrough in the negotiation in June. I think now a number of EU partners are hoping that by February they will reach an agreement. Because for the EU, this is really like if they don't manage to reach an agreement on this big pact, this will be a failure of the EU. And this also may put at risk a fundamental principle, which is the one of territorial asylum, that people, when they get to Europe, they can claim for asylum. And I think there is a concern that if countries don't find an agreement, the situation will further deteriorate.
Camille, I just want to jump in there because we've had the Americans who've gone about this slightly differently. A couple of months or years ago, actually, we had the U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, who went to the points where migrants are coming from countries in Central America. Clearly, there are certain pockets of the world where the migrants coming into Europe come from. Should EU officials try and go to countries of origin and try and see what the problem is in those countries because nobody wants to realistically...
No, well, I would actually argue this has been done, and I think the American strategy was actually very much inspired from something the European have tried to do since 2015, which is to fund, put development assistance in the countries of origin. So, in different countries in sub-Saharan Africa, to achieve what they've called addressing the root causes of migration. That is to create jobs, to create conditions for people not to leave their home. The problem is, this takes a very long time, and also, the more the more conditions improve, the more people may also aspire to something even better, and may sometime, decide that they're going to move. What we're seeing is it's a little bit of a conundrum in that. On the EU side, we need labor, we need labor forces. The pandemic has shown how much we need migrant workers. And on the other hand, we have people who want to come to Europe to work. And what we're failing to do is to organize, legal pathways for these people so that they can come regularly to Europe. And I think that's something that in Europe we just don't manage to have this conversation because the issue of migration has become so politicized that it makes it really hard to talk about the creation of legal
But if
pathways.
European states need the migrant workers and clearly will benefit from migrant workers, is there a failure at the top of the European level of how they sell it to their member states?
I think it's a mix of reasons, but indeed, I think you need to remember that this is the prerogative of EU member states. So in a way, the EU, what they can do, the European Commission, they can encourage member states to create these pathways, but it needs to be done by member states. So indeed, that's a failure that we're seeing. And this has been, a conversation for a very long time. There were expectations that after the pandemic, we would move forward on this topic. And yet we're seeing this is not happening once again.
Camille Le Coz, thank you very much for your analysis there. Very interesting discussion indeed. Thank you.